Hey, what's going on, guys? Arav here, and welcome back to the Pitlane Podcast, episode 91 today with the usual host, myself, Arav, Callum, and Tom, to discuss some off-race week news for a while, because obviously we've had the triple header, so this has actually been the first off-race week podcast for 3-4 weeks, so
4 weeks, yeah.
Kind of very, very odd. Yeah, very, very odd that we haven't reviewed a Grand Prix in this one. We're only previewing the German Grand Prix, obviously, today, and talking about that off news. To start off with, then, we're going to start off with actually a question from our Patreon page, because it links in nicely with the topic we're going to actually talk about anyway, which was Greg Schofield asking, assume you'll talk about this anyway, literally we are, should Toro Rosso be a sacrificial lamb to improve Honda's performance next season? And this is coming off the back of Red Bull apparently giving the go-ahead to Honda to just try and develop that engine as best they can with Toro Rosso, i.e. take the penalties, take as many as you need if you want to introduce new parts that are going to improve the development, because essentially now Red Bull want to push on with their long-term plan of, we are going to have the Honda engine next season, so get going, Honda, start now, start the work. So guys, what are we thinking? Like, initial reactions to that?
How you can take it, you're back.
Hi again. It's an interesting one because I've seen a few articles about this, and Red Bull have been like, "Oh no, we didn't say that," and then sometimes it's been like, "Yeah, we're going to sacrifice Toro Rosso," and it's quite a weird one because obviously Red Bull put a big enough burden on Toro Rosso by nicking their drivers when they start to get good. So,
Yeah.
But that is the whole point of the Red Bull driver program, and they are the sister team. They are owned by Red Bull, but under the same person. So you can see the temptation for Red Bull to try and do that, but in the philosophy of the sport, it is probably going to get looked down upon. It'd be interesting to see what you two think. I would look down upon it if they just thought, sod it, our season's over, we're just going to purposely screw over Hartley and Gasly for the rest of the season and put them at the back. I don't think it's really within the right means of the sport, even though we know why, the ultimate gain of both Red Bull and Toro Rosso with the Honda in the back, but I don't know. I don't really like it. I don't think it's within the philosophy of the sport, even though they are sister teams.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how I feel on this, to be honest with you. I am firmly on the fence with this one. I can understand both sides of the coin because it also makes really good sense that Toro Rosso do test any things Red Bull 1 tested. I'll give a reason why I might be 51-49 towards actually agreeing with Toro Rosso being a bit of a test dummy. The reason being is because in the last week or so we've seen that Aston Martin and altogether the 2021 regulations is sort of gone a bit cold lately, as in there's been some troubles. Whether everyone push it through or not in the end remains to be seen. But Aston Martin have also seemed to have cooled their interest a bit, so there is potential that Red Bull might not be with Honda for just 2 years. So in the scenario that, let's imagine Red Bull are with Honda for like 4 to 5 seasons, it's a big jump, and also it's in their best interest to have a car or an engine, should I say, that is firmly up to scratch or there or thereabouts. So in a way I can understand it, but then also it's not fair on Gasly and Hartley. So yeah, I don't really know how I feel on this one, to be honest.
I think I'd be with Tom, kind of like half and half. I can see the advantages. I also kind of just feel for kind of the human side calls to me in terms of just like what a Gasly and Hartley are going to be like. Because Gasly's already said in interviews after the British Grand Prix that he was feeling the engine difference, for the Honda engine, and also he talked about it being difficult to keep up with Sauber maybe and the pace of the midfield teams to try and keep their position in the championship and try and move on. So if they get stuck with penalties, albeit they're going to have a better engine then to maybe fight forward, but there's only so much you can fight forward if you're starting from the back every single time. Which I don't know, the way that articles were spinning it, the way Red Bull said it kind of seemed like literally like they were kind of willing to let Toro Rosso be at the back every single race, like towards the end of the season, due to just hopefully Honda, I guess Red Bull hoping Honda that bring in upgrades like every single race pretty much to really step it up. But then at the same time, like Callum said, it is a business decision of let's just, do the work now. Start the Red Bull Honda relationship basically now, and almost you have this season as a kind of cheat kind of season, almost like a way that they can do in-season testing without doing in-season testing, if you know what I mean. So yeah,
it calls into question the whole point. It does. In a way,
because this is why the whole relationship of Toro Rosso and Red Bull was like iffy anyway back in the day. Like I think, what was it, like when Vettel first came to the team, was it 2007? There was a bit of kind of debate right before 2007 about how linked are Red Bull and Toro Rosso, and I think at some point didn't Toro Rosso have to really definitively like show that they are very separate in many ways.
Even though I think it was in 2009 their cars looked identical. Like, you could mistake the difference between the Red Bull and the Toro Rosso. Obviously, by the end of the season, there were two completely different cars, but they were identical. But it does call into question, what is the point of Toro Rosso if they're never allowed to make any step forward? And obviously, if they weren't at the back of the grid every single race with a new Honda upgrade, then they might be able to get some points, then some more money, then maybe make the way through to the forefront. Because is there anything wrong in having Red Bull and Toro Rosso at the front?
Well, you two know I'm a sucker for like a underdog kind of hierarchy shake-up. Like I've done it many times in my F1 game series, but I also would love to see it in real life. You know, just like that. I don't know what it is. It's just that kind of up against the man kind of mantra of like, I like the idea of a smaller team upsetting the big team by surprising them and doing well.
Yeah.
But Toro Rosso, like you say, Cal, just been strangled pretty much to the point where either by, like you said, nicking their drivers or nicking their resources or giving them penalties to help their own cause, Red Bull. So it's a tricky one. But Red Bull do have their own rights to do that. It's just about, like you said, the sport, like, called into question. That's the interesting one for you guys in the comments, I think. I think for the first time, like this, I think there's been a lot of healthy debate about this one in particular. So let us know in the comments what you think about that, if it's right or wrong. Tom, do you want to add anything lastly to it, to add to your points?
No? I don't know. I'm maybe not.
You're still very much on the fence.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm as much on both of your side in terms of underdog. I don't have any feeling for Toro Rosso. It's still a Red Bull team.
Right, yeah.
So it's still Red Bull. I feel for, like you said, I feel for the people, the man and the women involved. So drivers, crew, for working pretty much up. You know, you're working up to a certain glass ceiling, so to speak.
Yeah.
But sympathy for the Toro Rosso team, not really, because I'd rather feel sympathy for, an independent team like Manor or Sauber, something like that. So
I mean, at the end of the day, Toro Rosso aren't going anywhere.
Exactly. So
because
there's no
Red Bull
risk of
fund
them folding. So
Red Bull. I think Red Bull would still be happy if Toro Rosso were last in the championship.
Exactly.
And they're helping their cause.
Especially if that's their experiment. So I don't think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's why I've got no sympathy factor in it. For me, it's just.
I mean, that's a very good side to it, I guess. So. Yeah, I mean, like I said, let us know in the comments below what you thought about that. And that kind of moves us on to then the next kind of big other topic, I guess, was the calendar. A lot of talk about off that triple header that we literally just mentioned that seems ages ago since we had an off race week one. There's a lot of talk about how stressful that 3-week header was for the staff, and it's not going to be back on next year's calendar. The hope is, because they have made Australia, I believe, like a week or so earlier, and they've also made Abu Dhabi as late as December now.
Yeah,
which is kind of crazy to think, because to have a championship that goes into December is kind of crazy. But they've done that to ensure the 21 calendar race does not have a triple header, because there is that asterisk of Miami being penciled in. So in terms of the calendar length, question from Ram McPhee, and also just generally there's been a question in Formula One, because I think Cyril of Renault was talking about lessening the calendar to make it more valuable. But Ram McPhee's question, how many races should be on the calendar? So you two, do you want to give me like a range maybe of like three numbers?
25 that Liberty were proposing, put it that way.
Yeah. Well, give me a range of like something to something, of like a three digit rate, like 3 race range.
I think 18 to 21.
I was going to say,
we've been floating around the last few years.
18 to 20. I think, when 2012, that was the perfect length. 20 races. Yeah. I think it was 20 races.
I think like 17 to 19. I think 19 is almost like a perfect number, but I also think 17, if we're talking about shortening it, I think 17 is the max I feel we could get away with.
I feel like there's too many venues now to go back down to 17, 16. Like,
true.
There's just way too many venues.
I mean, that was literally actually the talking point of Cyril in an interview of Renault. Avatar was like, he was talking about the value of a GP, and he was saying we're kind of diluting the value of a GP right now by having so many. And if we go to 25, that would just be crazy. And he kind of, I don't know if he was playing devil advocate on purpose or he genuinely thought this. Like, he was like, maybe there needs to be a case of literally just going to the 21 races and going, right, 6 of you are getting axed. and see what happens to the market, see what the races, the race organisers, how they react. Like, are they going to chuck money back at F1 to give the sport more funding, and ultimately that'll be great for the teams then? Or are they going to go a different route by offering better stuff at their own Grand Prix instead of trying to butter up F1 with better contracts? I don't know.
I just thought up of one quite important factor is if we keep the competition. Because it's all well and good having a season that's 25 races long, but if it's getting wrapped up within 20 races, you don't need them extra 5. And I know positions below the winners can change, but at the end of the day, that's what the spectacle's on. And if we're turning up to 5 or 6 Grand Prix and the championship's already been considered, then there's no real reason we need to carry on. Obviously, in the past couple of years, well, in the past 2 years at least, 2018 and 2017, we've had 2 teams or even 3 teams going for the title. But back when Mercedes were dominating, they were wrapping up the constructors with 3, 4, 5 races to go. And you were kind of sitting there going, what's the real reason we're going racing? To be honest,
well, it's like when Hamilton
difficult.
Got it in 2015, and Rosberg won those 4 races on the bounce afterwards. Because Hamilton gave up, essentially, as much as he maybe doesn't want to admit it, and his team don't want to admit it. So, yeah, that would be kind of crap to have that for, like, 5, 6 races.
The same in 2017 as well, when he gave up towards the end. He thought, is this really the competition?
There's also that question of, like, by lessening the calendar, do you make... Like, I kind of have to almost agree with... I don't think... I don't agree with being that harsh about doing the whole, 6 of you are going, but... He does have a point about making a race count a lot more without making it artificially like double points. It's kind of like, right, there's only this amount of races left in the season, so these really do count a lot more. Whereas if you know, like, I've got an extra 5 races left, it's kind of a bit more chill, isn't it?
Chance, yeah.
So I don't know.
I think out of all of it, it's the biggest factor. The first thing that popped into my head was man hours, and I just think. It's getting ridiculous now. Like, I always thought, like, what would it be like to getting into Formula 1 and working in a Formula 1 team? And you got to think, it must be relentless. You are non-stop. And that's at the factory. Never mind flying off to 25 different Grand Prix venues across 6 continents. You're a bit like, can you... really stretch that many people? Obviously, it gets more jobs in if you want to get more people in your team, but...
That's what I was going to say.
The man hours is just ridiculous.
I'm sort of in a different boat to you two. I mean, I grew up watching F1 when there was like 16 races a season. I'm actually against the tradition, though. I quite like this packed calendar of 2021 races. I disagree 25 is right. I think that's too much. I think 21-20 is perfect. Sure, it's a lot of hours, but I think that's not a bad thing. I genuinely believe this is an opportunity for teams to, get more staff in and give people more jobs, and give more people the opportunity to get into F1. Rotate staff around. There could be a lot more different opportunities here for people, and also I feel like they could definitely maintain 20 to 21 races a lot easier if they got this thing out of their head of having to have 1 race per country. Because you could string together a lot of races in the same part of the world a lot easier if they weren't so fixated on the idea of having 1 race per country. So, for example, if they did San Marino, for example, and Monza back-to-back, it would really help in terms of the hours, travelling, and also for the teams getting around. So there is an aspect to it. Why do they fly away to Canada after Monaco and then have to fly back overseas again for Mexico, USA, and Brazil? Makes no sense. And then obviously Miami as well. So I think a bit of calendar reshuffling could be in order to make it a bit more, makes more sense. Like, Australia again, other side of the world, they could perfectly just do that at the end of the season when they go to Japan and Singapore maybe. So
you have to be careful about climate. I know that's one thing. They tried the British Grand Prix in April and that ended badly.
Yeah, but chucking Australia from March to October is the exact same. It's spring and autumn. The weather will be exactly the same.
Yeah.
The same way Brazil used to be the 3rd race in the calendar, and now it's the penultimate one.
Yeah,
the same way Malaysia used to be at the start of the calendar, and then it went towards the
Russia
end.
now as well.
Russia as well. What I'm saying is, you just flip it on the calendar. So
keep the European ones that are very dependent on
exactly
in the middle.
And like I said, even just mixing up. So I know it's expensive, but what if, for example, you got rid of I don't know, let's say the British Grand Prix is going after all. Why not just have a race in Hockenheim permanently and replace British Grand Prix with a race around the Nürburgring? And you've got 2 in Germany, you do them back to back, or you do them in close proximity. It can easily be, I think, or not easily, but it can be resolved a lot better.
Even the triple header, like, that wasn't a logistical nightmare.
No,
I don't think. Like, in terms of the fact that all the races were in Europe, weren't they? I'm trying to remember all 3 of the races. It was France, Austria and Silverstone, yeah. So that's not a logistical nightmare. Like, we all know it's easy to travel around Europe. But I do agree that maybe a calendar reshuffle and kind of grouping them together and open up the idea of maybe having 2 races in, especially like if you've got, there almost needs to be like a treaty to stop the best tracks going off the calendar. So, for example, getting like Silverstone, just keeping that on the calendar and making sure that it's not going to budge.
I think if we're talking about value as well, I disagree with Cyril because I think every race has a lot of value nowadays in F1. Personally speaking, from all the tracks we have in the calendar, it's not like a couple of years ago when we used to have the Korean Grand Prix, the Indian Grand Prix, which were just tracks for, you could argue, PR stunts, to try and get some eyes in those countries and try something different. Every track now has got good pedigree. You could argue Paul Ricard not because it's a test track, fair enough, but France as a country is a racing country with tradition. You've got 3 French drivers on the grid. Malaysia's gone now, but Malaysia was on the calendar for 17 years as well. So every track's on there. I think the most recent one is Kota, and even Kota you can say now is a very well-established, successful racing track. So there is no tracks on there that aren't racing pedigree. Maybe you could argue Bahrain, for example, which is in the middle of nowhere, and you question the attendance sort of thing because how do people turn up?
Do you reckon it boils down to when you sit down watching the racing? Do you go, what feeling do you get watching this race compared to the valuable ones, like watching the British Grand Prix, watching the Belgian Grand Prix, watching the Monaco Grand Prix?
Like, for example,
and you don't really get that.
I think like
you feel that every race has its value.
I feel like when we sit down to watch the Russian Grand Prix later this year, it's not going to be the same as sitting down and watching the German Grand Prix just coming up.
Yeah, like for example, you said it there. So Baku and Russia, straight away, those 2 tracks, they have no. I'm not gonna say no place in F1, but there is no tradition or F1 history or heritage or need for F1.
I mean,
I
would keep Baku for the sake of it's a crazy race, though.
Okay, it has been, but even then, it's like for me, there's no real value, and it's a relatively far fly away for F1 to go to, in the middle of nowhere. So. It's what I'm saying. You could easily replace Baku and Sochi with another 2 races in Europe, which would make it a lot easier for the teams to get around, is what I'm saying. So I think calendar tweaks could be a massive deal, but generally I think 20 races is...
I think what we have now, like this year, minus the triple header, is pretty much fine. I think
it's perfect. And if they can't manage it, just get more staff in.
Literally, just for this year, if they just did the change they're going to do for next year, like move Australia 1-2 weeks earlier, move Abu Dhabi backwards, so we don't have that triple header we just had.
Well, they are, aren't they? Because it's replaced by Miami.
Yeah, but I'm saying like if they had this calendar doing that, like if they spread it out, so this year's calendar didn't have this triple header, this year's calendar would have been perfect, pretty much in my eyes, in terms of number of races. And the places we're going, all of them bar maybe Russia, is a guarantee. Like, okay, there's gonna be something that spices up a little bit.
You're excited for it, like you are genuinely pumped. To be fair, even when you sit down and watch Russia, you're not gonna go, "Oh, F1's on" because it's in Russia.
No,
you're still hyped. When the 5 red lights come on, you're like, "Yeah, boy, I'm ready."
It's just a case of like I think Russia, literally, I think is the only race I can point to in this entire calendar and go, I don't mind not being there. Like if something comes up like a big emergency and I'm not there to watch it, I'm not going to be that gutted.
For me, China's another one for me. It's in the middle of nowhere, as far as I know. They're building around there, but it's a track that's in the middle of nowhere. And it's after all these years, it's been on the calendar 14 years. But similar to Malaysia, it does nothing for me. It's not a race I want to go to, put it that way. Visually, from what I've seen,
so it's on the other side of the world as well.
No, it's exactly. But it's what I'm saying. It's the main reason why they ditched Magny-Cours in France, because it was apparently in the middle of nowhere. So there are those arguments. But anyway, I digress. We're going too long on this subject, I think.
I mean, yeah. And I'm not actually that fussed about calendars, but in terms
You know what?
of
As long as
20's
like
fine.
I like
In
the
terms
current
of the-
structure we have and the amount we have is good. We just need to keep an eye on the boys and girls that run the
what we
teams.
have is fine. It's really just a case of making sure that the teams aren't overstressed, because that's the actual entire point of the debate. Is this too much for the teams?
They should just get more staff.
Because Liberty wants to grow the calendar, and the teams are kind of pushing back at, we don't have them. We can't keep up with this. And also, I don't know about you two. Question for you two, because I feel like I'm very polar opposite to every other F1 fan in this case. The triple header, I was kind of over it halfway through it. I was kind of like, I actually would rather have had a break than have the British Grand Prix the next week, because I was kind of like almost like I've had too much F1 in a way. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit like skewed
No,
because
I
I missed
loved
the
it.
British Grand Prix because I was on holiday, so I'd have
true.
loved
You
it to
missed
be a
that,
week
yeah.
later.
But for
I'd have
me,
loved it.
after Austria, I was kind of like, I wouldn't have minded an off weekend now and then have the British Grand Prix the next weekend.
I'm fine.
I don't know. I like a double header. I think triple sometimes you're a bit like.
I like doubles because it's kind of like, oh, we've had to wait so long, and then it's like bang.
Oh, more F1,
next
yeah.
week, bang.
Yeah.
But this one was kind of like, right, so we have this one. Oh, again next week. Okay. Oh, and then again, and I'm kind of like,
There's only
we
so
just
many
had
weekends.
two, come on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a bit of a strain sometimes, but yeah, I see what you mean. I like some people might scoff at it, but it depends how into F1 you are. I think as a
Like I
person.
said, I just come
and
through
if
a
you've got
case
other
of,
sports to watch, especially when
it's
the World
kind
Cup was on.
yeah, it was a case for me, kind of just like it just seemed like, oh my god, again. Like if I had stuff to do on the weekend, like it would have just been taken up. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I
agree.
feel like I'm probably polar opposite, but yeah, I think the World Cup did play into it as well.
Yeah, I think the World Cup was a
especially
huge
around. It was
factor.
like literally like, oh, my entire day's gone with watching football matches and then
Yes,
the F1.
Totally.
Although, though, could you imagine? Do you know if we were at the British Grand Prix last year? How qualifying happened, and then we watched the England game straight away. I'd love that a lot.
Yeah, that would have been crazy. That would have been a good atmosphere. Yeah. And then finally to the German Grand Prix. Obviously, it's kind of previewing the German Grand Prix ahead. Obviously, posted on Thursday, so literally the action's going to start tomorrow. Knowing us, we're going to jinx something, and something will crop up in Hockenheim straight away on Friday. But Germany, Antonio Giovinazzi is going to be driving for Sauber in practice, so it's been a while since we've seen him in an F1 car. And then we've also had, going into this week, was Mercedes saying they're going to reshuffle some of their technical staff. And this was also off the back of Toto Wolff, I think recently in the last 2 days, was saying something about them making way too many mistakes. And I think me and Tom talked about this last podcast about, like, I think they are actually making a lot of mistakes and they need to sort it out, even though that, Hamilton's made a great recovery drive and, Bottas did okay. It was still a mistake on their half of keeping Bottas out, and then obviously Austria was an even bigger blunder. So, I don't know, do we feel like that's enough for Mercedes, or do they really need to look at the root core, like the strategist? Like, do they need a new one, or do they need to maybe start thinking a little bit differently? Because I feel like, I said it before, they rely on two cars right there up at the front, and they get a bit flustered when not. So
they're overreacting way too much. To this
Yeah, I
whole
mean,
thing.
you got to remember the fact that they have
too
won
much.
4 world championships.
yeah,
People are looking into this way too much for Mercedes. I think they're more than entitled to make a mistake. They're human, and I tweeted it after the last race. I think it's just a question of characters on a show, because they just have genuine competitors now, and a mistake is punished. So it's just the nature of F1. I think they're reacting way too quick to events that occurred. Sure, I can understand they want to stay on top. They want to put what's wrong right straight away. But in this scenario, I feel like I don't know. It almost feels like they're going paranoid. Like when you're just
I agree
too
with that,
obsessive with like perfection. So I feel like they're rushing into this a bit too quick, personally speaking.
You got to
so we'll see.
remember, like, you can easily point out within the last decade all the mistakes that Red Bull and Ferrari have made whilst being at the front.
I mean,
easily.
strategy mistakes, Ferrari, the famous
Exactly,
mistakes.
and they're not even at the front. But like,
Exactly.
you can even think back to Red Bull, the countless amount of mistakes they made, pit stop
Ricardo,
blunders.
Monaco, 2016.
Yeah, but it's even dating back further. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example. For example, like, it's not even, it's the drivers as well. Like, they do come as a complete package. So you just kind of got to take that one on the chin and go, yeah, we made a mistake. Why did we make the mistake? Is it because of the team personnel who've won 4 world championships because we've been kind of cruising at the front? Or is it the fact that we've actually got now someone, not just someone, two teams breathing down our necks and not knowing what the pecking order is going to be like when we turn up to qualifying and race day? So I think it's just, obviously, as a Hamilton and / Mercedes supporter, it's frustrating, but you can see exactly why it's happening. And it's all for the good of the sport, really. So they can reshuffle all they like, but we're not going to be too bothered about it because it just means that Mercedes are getting a little bit hot and flustered, and it means that they're starting to wobble, and it means that we've got a wide open front.
It's good when teams aren't fully in control, when they have the blindfold over themselves, literally like what happened at Bahrain when they didn't know what the tyre situation was. You had Vettel trying long, Mercedes tried something different. When they just don't know all the cards, that's when the sport's at its absolute peak, I feel, when the teams aren't in control. And so, it's kind of good to have those cracks, but obviously Mercedes are, like Tom said, reacting maybe fast to it or overreacting to it. We'll see how much that technical shake-up is going to really affect them. And also, I want to feel like Hamilton also has quite a bit of influence on that in terms of like maybe just, his vibe.
I really think
his vibe was kind of like, okay, guys, change something because I'm not liking this vibe right now.
I refuse to accept the way James Vowles had to get on the radio at Austria. I still can't get over that. Like, no team member should ever have to do that for their driver publicly, in my opinion.
I mean, it shows balls to publicly.
props to James.
Props to him, but for me, it's still bang out of order to have to discipline. What's I'm looking for? It's just pure discipline. So Lewis should know and not have to keep on going to the point where he has to almost force his engineer to get on the radio and make that statement. For me, it just seems that. I mean, I said it sort of, not seriously, but dictatorshipy. And like I said, I think Mercedes are on the verge of becoming a bit paranoid in terms of ultimate perfection and striving for the least mistakes possible.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I feel like there's a bit of a crack starting to form.
Well, let's see how the cracks come into at Hockenheim. So let's get into those predictions then for pole and the top 5. Obviously, last time we were at Hockenheim was 2016.
We've got nothing to work off. Absolutely nothing.
Nothing to work off because
I mean, last time we were there, what was it? Mercedes basically dominated. I remember because I remember watched it in Germany, and it was one of the worst Grand Prix I think I've ever watched. It was so boring. I remember nothing happening.
It was moist. It was Hamilton 1. Ricciardo second and Verstappen.
Let's go with the poles and then give some thinking time for the top 5. So Tom,
I'm going to go Vettel. I saw enough at Silverstone to think Ferrari are genuinely on equal parity with Mercedes now.
I think that as
well.
I'm
going to go Sebastian
Vettel pole.
I'll go Vettel as well. They've stepped up.
All right. I'm going to go with, just throw a spanner in the works. Kimi pole.
I just knew you'd say
Just go for it. All this stuff about, is he finally actually going to leave this year? Now, it seems all these rumours are flying about. Let's go Kimi pole.
Kimi's very underratedly been in very good form lately. I don't think people give him enough credit. I think he's been racing really well lately, so that could happen.
All right, Kimi pole, your top 5 then, Tom?
I've got 2 things in my mind here.
Right, you can't need 5.
No. I mean, I've got 2 scenarios for the race.
All right. Well, take us through at least one of them.
Scenario 1, it's going to be a very traditional race, and Vettel converts the pole. Right. Scenario 2, Vettel doesn't even make the top 5 because he retires, and it's sort of a bit of an even up from Hamilton's retirement in Austria, and it's typical home race disappointment, which tends to happen quite a lot in F1.
Right. Just give us one of them then.
Stick with the Vettel W.
All right.
Because I want to see Mercedes crack a bit more, and I'm curious to see how that story prolongs itself over the season. I will go for Lewis second. Still does a solid job. Kimi third. Valtteri P4. And Max fifth because he's had Ricciardo on toast lately. So,
all right, Callum.
Mine's not going to be too far away, I don't think. I'm going to say Vettel wins. Then we'll put a Bottas in second, Hamilton third, Raikkonen fourth, and then Ricciardo in fifth. I don't think Red Bull are going to be anywhere near the front this weekend. I feel like they're just going to moan about their straight line speed again.
Yeah, maybe. I'm going to go... Okay, so Kimi was on pole for mine. I'm going to go with then switches at some point in the race. Vettel win. I'm going to go with... Valtteri Bottas second place. Hamilton third. Maybe gets a little bit mixed up at the very beginning. Has to come back a little bit, or Bottas just shows him up this one.
So you've done Kimi Doe then?
Kimi P4.
Kimi's just had a nightmare.
Yeah, off pole. doesn't get the tyres right or something like that. And then I'll say Verstappen, Verstappen P5.
It's got to be Verstappen, surely.
And then there was a
suggestion. Sniffing ages.
Yeah, no. And then also, there was actually a comment that I actually want to go with is a suggestion for best of the rest of, like, a surprise best of the rest. Like, who's going to crop up and, like...
How do you define best of the rest?
No, okay, no, so not best of the rest, because that would literally be then who's P7.
Yeah.
But, okay, let's, like, say, like a midfield kind of runner that's going to pop out into the points. Like, as a surprise. Is there going to be even a surprise?
Is Charles Leclerc a surprise?
That's what I'm saying. Can you redefine
I
that?
think that's a surprise.
Everyone's scoring points at this point.
Okay, then, P7. Who's P7? Magnussen. Cal?
Science.
I want to go Hulkenberg. I think he's been on a low, so he needs to come back on a high. At the German Grand Prix.
What did you just say there?
That was a
Hulkenberg got 6th in Silverstone.
Yeah, that's one race though. I don't count that as a high enough. He needs to do it consistently. Because he's had so many races where he's just been like meh. So he needs to show it again and actually
I'm already regretting my choice of Magnussen because I think I've read something Haas. I'm looking forward to this race, but you know what?
He's
my turbo driver, so
we'll see if Haas flip-flop once again. Literally, one of the most interesting cars I've seen in F1 in a while. How flip-floppy it is in terms of performance. But that's been the podcast then for the German Grand Prix. We'll see you guys in the next one where we review the German Grand Prix in only a couple of days' time, since this was a later week one. The reason why we waited this long, by the way, we didn't know. We told the Patreon users, but just because we wanted to wait for more news, because on Monday and Sunday there just wasn't that much coming out, and in that time the Honda news came out, and also there was a lot more talk about the calendar. So, and speaking about Patreon, obviously we used 2 of the Patreon questions. If you do like what we're doing around here, you can support us directly on Patreon. You can also, if you fancy getting yourself a racing chair, you can use the code PitlaneF1 at GT Omega and get yourself a racing chair or even a racing rig if you want to get into that F1 esports hype. But also you can catch us on audio on the go, SoundCloud and iTunes, links both below. These 2, check them out on Twitter. Links on screen right now. Links in the description as well. And we'll see you guys next time. Get subscribed to this channel for the next week's podcast, the German Grand Prix. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.